thank you, Stefan Knöpfer, for your presentation today. We're very much looking forward to this topic and to hearing about your experiences. So, yeah, we are very much looking forward to learning a lot from you. And yeah, everyone, if you have questions, raise your hands after the presentation or write your questions into the chat room and we will try to answer your questions. So thank you very much, Stefan. Stefan is ornithologist, conservationist. He is tree climber and has a lot of talents and is very active in conservation. Stefan Knöpfer is Rewild Institute team member. And yeah, thank you, Stefan, for being here. And yeah, all the best for the presentation and see you later when we try to answer the questions. Okay, thank you, Stefan.
Perfect, Ingrid. Thank you very much for the introduction. So, hello, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me fine. My internet connection is not the best here, but I will try the best. Please let me know if something is not working out properly. It's a very new way to do presentations like this. Normally we're doing it in a classroom or something like this, but it's also very interesting to see how the modern world is going on. This presentation normally is a presentation for arborists if they are in an education program or whatever. So I'm doing this presentation normally in 4 hours. So I will try it now in 1 hour and a little bit maybe, that we have enough time for questions and everything. The topic is nature conservation in arboriculture. It's a very difficult topic here in Austria. I can just speak about Austria, a little bit of Germany, because I know the people there best, and I don't know how it is in other countries in Europe, but it's mainly more or less the same problem. It's a kind of an American system coming over to Europe. It's about traffic safety assessment of trees in urban situations. It's a controversy between habitat protection and this topic, because if trees getting old and have dead wood partly, so it's sometimes kind of a tough situation to say it's a habitat tree or it's a tree which is dangerous for the citizens. So we are very often discussing this topic, trying to implement it into the law system, and also try to educate as much people as possible that there is a kind of a awareness for this sensitive topic. I just will start it now. If you have any questions during the presentation, do not hesitate to ask them. The subjects are the protection status of species in Austria. As I mentioned it, I can just speak about the species in Austria because I'm living here. And the law situation in all the European countries is a bit different. In some countries, it's much better than in Austria. Max said it right, we are very far behind anything like conservation things. So we're trying to pick it up as well and try to implement it in the law system as well. The habitat tree as well. What is a habitat tree? Birds and their link to old trees, faunistic usage of tree structures, beds and their need of tree cavities, the alternatives if you have to remove an old tree, and recognizing of injured animals and the first aid if something happening. At my point of view, I'm just speaking of the point of view of an arborist. So if we have to take care of all trees, or if there are trees in an urban habitat, how can we deal with it and what's possible to do? If there are living animals inside or protected species, how to act and what's the steps, how we can go on to check it, and if the tree has to be cut down, what's to do then. A little glimpse into the law situation in Austria. It's very complex, so I will not go too deep into the detail. We have some directives. The most of you maybe know the EU Birds Directive. It's a very big protection status for birds all over Europe. And there are some areas that are protected for these species, the SPAs, and many species are listed in the Annex 1. So this is a very high protected status, and if these birds are listed into this directive, then it's a very well protected animal, and it's forbidden to destroy either the animal or the habitat of this animal. So it's a little bit difficult if you cut down a tree and there is a tree cave where inside nesting protected woodpecker species or singing bird species or bats as well, but they are not in the birds directive for sure, but in the FFH directive, for example. We have this FFH, Fauna Flora Habitat Directive, as well here in Austria, for sure. It's EU conform, and it's yeah, protecting animals into several protecting statuses. So we have the Annex 2 and the Annex 4. It's very important for us tree climbers and arborists, because for Annex 2, these are species which need protected areas as well. And if they are in Annex 4, they are strictly protected, and it's forbidden to harm them or their habitat as well. So this is very important to know. If you taking care of a tree, or if you're cutting trees or bushes, whatever, then it's a very sensitive situation if you destroy the habitat of a listed animal. I have an example. The bats in Austria, they're all listed in FFH4 and some as well at FFH2. So for these species, you have to protect the areas where they live in. And a good example as well is the common dormouse. Maybe the most of you know it. It's on the picture. And this is our Annex 4, so it's a very strictly protected animal, even if it's very small, but it's very strictly protected in Austria. Then there are the Natura 2000 areas. It's the largest coordinated network of protected areas. The FFH and the Birds Directive areas are playing into it. And there is a very interesting tool. It's the Natura 2000 Network Viewer. So you can have a look in the internet, which areas, if you work in one area or want to do a project there, you can find it at this network viewer, and you can see if it's a Natura 2000 area or not. Then we have the red list, for sure, it's all over. We have the OASIS database in Austria. If you're not sure if this species is listed, then we can have a look inside of this database. For sure, you have to know the name of this animal. It's sometimes not so easy if you have, if you're working with the class of insects or with some birds, especially if they are chicks in the nests, then it's pretty difficult to say which species it is, for sure. We have the list of flagship species of BirdLife, for sure. BirdLife is also ranking this list, this species with a kind of a lighting ranking. You have green, yellow, and red listing. And you see 102 species are priority listed in Austria. So it's it's raising up, sadly. So we have many species that are coming on this list as well during the last years. So we hope that, yeah, one day it will stop to increase all the time, you know. We have the protection of species of the Bundesministerium für Nachhaltigkeit in Austria. So you can find it on the web page as well. Sadly, it's just in German. But for the German-speaking people amongst us, there is a possibility to have a glimpse inside of it. The national parks in Austria, it's for sure the UCN category. It's the same like in the other countries in Europe. We have 6 of them. And for sure, inside of these national parks, we have the core areas, and in the core areas, you have special protected areas as well, where you can find a lot of dead wood and standing dead wood and old trees. But outside of these areas are also very good places to find it. There's another nice place to find very old and rotten trees. It's the Leinzer Tiergarten inside of Vienna. It's very funny because it's close to the city. Lots of people walking through it every day, and there are a lot of big dead wood and old trees, which create habitats for all woodpecker species and even owls. Strix orelensis is breeding since 2 years inside of this park, and this is a very, very nice sign. It's not breeding in a nest box, they are wild breeding in the big trees. What's missing? Germany is very often a good comparison partner because Germany and Austria is always a little bit the same with the latter. Austria is always running after Germany with this protection status, but Germany is also in the paragraph 44 of the Federal Act for Protection of Nature, the ban of damage to reproduction and housing sites in old and dead wood, and this in the industrial forest. So this is a very high step which is implemented there. We are far away from this situation, sadly. So I hope maybe in the future it will be possible to say this as well about Austria. Yeah, here just oh, this is partly still in German, I'm sorry. It's just written for the protection of plants and animals. There's also the conservation of their habitats. It's just written there in yeah, it's translated in English as well. I just see it. Sorry. The biodiversity clear housing mechanism is also interesting. It's a network, information network, all over the Europe as well, and also I think further at the meanwhile. It's for it's the Convention of Biodiversity, and Austria provides a national internet portal for it, and it's very interesting to have a look inside, because the network is getting bigger and bigger, and so it's a good hope for the future. Okay, let's come to the second point. It's the habitat tree itself. You see on this picture a very old reducing canopy tree. These trees, in this stage, you will find it very rarely in Austria. It's very sad because I love the picture of these old trees, and I have still a farm here in Austria where my goats are living, and we have a lot of these very old fruit trees, and they are looking like this picture. And I have pets inside and insects and birds as well, for sure. And it's very sad that these old trees are getting cut down all over Austria, because it's what I said at the beginning with the safetiness for traffic and people. The people say, yeah, you have to find a measurement when a tree is dangerous for the people. And in Austria, this measurement is deadwood. And this is a big, big problem for all fungi, for bats, for birds, for insects, and also for mammals, because they all dependent on these structures in the trees. It's a complex habitat, and it's increasing after a while more and more. So if the tree is rotting and falling apart, then it's very interesting. So the word dead tree or dead wood is not really characterizing, because a healthy tree is not even close to habitat like a dead tree could be after centuries, you know. So funnily, there is a big urbanization of wildlife, because in the cities, in the parks, you have very often very old and big trees, because they're taken care of, and it's not like in the industrial forests where very big trees are cut down because they are not this lucrative, like for example young spruce trees or whatever. So in Austria, in the forests, these kind of trees are getting fewer and fewer. So yeah, I hope maybe in the future it's possible. The ÖBF is at this time telling us that they are taking care of more deadwood and old tree structures. So we will see what is changing in the next years. It's a fragile ecosystem with dependencies. So I don't have to tell you all this. I think it's kind of a circle chain. If you take one part away, many species are affected by this removal. We see this all with the honeybees, for example. If you remove the diversity of blooming plants, or of fruit trees, then they have a big lack of nutrition, and this could be, yeah, the end of this species, as all of you know already. The best example are the big owls. Big owls are addicted or depending on big trees or diversity structures. So it's complicated if you remove these parts. If you remove the food source, then they are disappearing. Where you can find structures in a tree, it's very complex. If you have a very old tree, there are several and very different structures, which are all, most of the animals are specialized in. You have this biological, how can you say this, places where some species they are specialized in locating. So you have fungi structures, you have plant structures, you have different cavities in the trees, from woodpeckers or rotten places. You have dead wood in the canopy, you have dead wood amongst the trunk, you have dead wood in the root system, and you have cavities in the root system and all over the tree structure. So there are many insects, they are specialized in dead wood in the canopy, and they are not, for them it's not very helpful if the dead wood is lying on the floor, because they cannot use this structure. They have to have the structure up in the crown of the tree. And for sure, what is missing on this graphic, it's the nest of big birds, for example, eagles or heron, because inside of this nest is a very nice little microhabitat for insects, plants, fungi. So we will see also during this presentation that there is a big connection between everything, but I think that most of you already know this, so I don't have to discuss it too much this time. Just a very nice graphic is this picture. Maybe some of you know it already from the internet. It's very simple described. If you have a complex environment like the upper picture, you will find a big mass of a big diversity of species. And if you see it on the downside picture, as more empty as the habitat gets, then the species getting fewer and fewer, and the diversity is shrinking. So this is a clear thing, but it's very dangerous for us people as well, for sure, because we think if we have an agrar area which is very large, like partly in Austria as well, then you have problems with monoculture, not only in the plants, also in the animal structure or in the bacterial structure. Diseases like COVID-19 as well have easier way to survive in structures like this downside here than in a complex structure where you have a lot of antagonists or predators. And I think this will be a big part of the future of us, that we will fight with it if we lose diversity. The best example is the bark beetle, Ips typographus. Most of you maybe know it because it's the reason why the spruce forests are getting destroyed all over Europe. The main reason is that the environment is getting more and more monocultural, and the dead wood is leaving, because dead wood means losing quality wood, and the industrial forests are removing dead wood because where a dead tree is standing, no young tree can grow. So they're removing it, and what they're removing with it is the predators of the big bark beetle. And this is a big problem, as well as you know it, because hectares and acres of spruce trees getting destroyed every year because the bark beetle can move along without a problem. You see the antagonists of the bark beetle, for example, the red claret or the cardinal beetle, or the Braconidae and Calcitoidae, for example. They are nesting inside of the beetles. They are eggs and babies, and so they are very big antagonists of these beetles. For also the tree-toed woodpecker, which needs very autochthone spruce forests, and for sure they are also disappearing if you have just industrial young forests without any cavity opportunities. Woodpeckers do not like to build their nests in healthy pine trees, because of the resin. Also, bats have a big problem with the resin, so they need structures which are more dry or dying off, because in these structures they can build the caves that the woodpeckers and further on the bats can also use this, because the resin is very bad for the feathers as well, and the wings for the bats. Many insects have the same problem, so they never use very healthy pine trees. They need trees they are getting sick or yeah, rebuilding their canopy. As well, some leaf trees or mixed forest. For sure, we all know this would be the best solution, because then you can house many species which are specialized at some points. You see here how long it needs till a broken tree is wasting away. This can go over 10 years and further. It depends on the species. So if you have an old oak tree, it can need centuries till it's humus again. And it's very interesting after which season, more or less, you can find different insect species in this wood. We all know the longhorned beetles and the bark beetles. They are the first ones in a dying wood or in the freshly broken woods. Then you all know the stag beetle, for example, which is going after 4 to 10 years into the wood. And also the cardinal beetle you have seen before as a predator of the bark beetles. It also needs rotten wood after 4 to 10 years. And lying dead wood over 10 years, there are the ants inside, different worm species, the gastropoda like the snails, etc. So they all need this wood. If you remove this wood immediately from the forest because it's disturbing, or it's people say it's just the habitat of the bark beetles. So yeah, for sure it's habitat of bark beetles, but it's also the habitat of the antagonists. So if we remove it completely, we have a big problem fighting against parasites or whatever. Birds, and they're linked to old trees. For sure, they're all linked to trees because they're building the nests inside. It's clear this, but many birds really need old trees. So all owl species or bigger bird species cannot deal with young trees, because in a young tree, it's impossible to build a cave for a woodpecker. So it depends on, for sure, on the trunk dimension, but the most bigger bird species are demanding on older trees with a diameter of 40 centimeters plus. So yeah, we just find for sure bird nests in bushes and smaller trees, but if you look at the canopy of a small tree, then it's not that diverse like an old one, for example. We have 10 owl and 17 bird of prey species amongst Austria. They're breeding recently at the moment, more or less often here in Austria. Very rare owl species are the little owl, the Scops owl, and the Ural owl, for example. So they are getting more or less more at some points of Austria because they are nest box projects. But we see at the moment a different problem. The problem is not only the nesting situation, the problem is also the food situation. We have big problems with rodents sometimes in Austria because farmers using poison corn to remove it, and for sure this is as well a big problem for the predators. This year we, for example, had no Ural owl hatchlings because the mice in the forest are completely having a breakdown. This is normal because of the gradation, but we see it's more and more also with the little owls that the food source can be a very big problem. Insects are disappearing, and the diversity of rodents as well. So we have to fight against this as well. They are all linked to complex environment and big old trees, what I said already. And some species adapt easier than others. This is also clear as well. Most of you know the Buteo, which is sitting next to roads and waiting for roadkills. Also the Falcotinunculus is stealing this way and hunting next to roads because the rodents there are more representative than all over the countryside. And the Strixa luco, for example, is also breeding in parks and also on buildings at the moment. What I have missed here is the bubo bubo. It's also breeding on rooftops in Austria already, because they losing these places where they bred in former times. This is the rocky areas, because in the rocky areas we have lots of climbers at the moment, and it's getting more and more. And especially the climbers starting earlier the year, and then the breeding is lost during this situation. So the bubos are getting more and more into the urban place. It's also a good food source there, because we have rats and pigeon and crows, and the bubos are feeding on this as well. I bringing bubos in an industrial place every year. They are breeding where they have the sand stored for the concrete, and they're breeding inside of the sand boxes. But if you have a look at the big nests of big birds like Ciconia nigra or several eagle species, they have very, very heavy nests. Some of them can reach a weight of over 500 kilos. So you understand you need very strong trees to give it a static hold. With the imperial eagle, you can see on the right side, we have very often problems, because they are breeding in these flat areas, and there are very often populus species standing. That's the last big trees, but they are very easily breaking. So we have it very often that one of these big nests in a storm is breaking down, because you see the branches are not so big, and very often it happens that the nest is coming down, and we have to climb up and do a very fast alternative nest, and sitting the chicks inside, that the parents can come back and feed them further. Very often it's not working, because the young birds are injured because of the breakdown. And we have the problem in Austria that the hunters are cutting down these bigger trees, because they want to eliminate the possibility that big raptors are breeding all over these sites, because for sure they're hunting also hares and pheasants, and this is a very, very confrontational top issue in Austria since many years now. You can see the structures in the trees are very complex. We have many owls there, depending on woodpecker cavities. For example, the boreal owl, they need the cavities of black woodpecker, for example, and black woodpecker is also not everywhere located, so they have to find caves they are in the appropriate size. Also bigger birds, like you can see on the right picture, there is a old white-tailed eagle nest, and inside is breeding a bubo bubo. You can see the feather ears, and this is very often happening at the moment, because as I told you, the bubos leaving the former breeding places and now going into the open land and breeding in nests, or even nest boxes of Seca falcon. We have it as well, or on the rooftops of agriculture buildings, for example. And for sure, all falcons are depending on nests from other birds like crows or raven, because they're not building their own nests. And so they need a nest builder. And if we cut down all these trees, for sure, also the nests are disappearing. And then they have very difficulties to easily get a new nest, because they cannot build it by their own. The woodpeckers are a very important species and a key species for this success. So we have some woodpecker species, they make different cave dimensions and sizes. And it's very important for several bird species and also pets, because, yeah, I will come to this point later with the pets, but for birds, it's important how big is the entrance of the cave, because many birds depend on the size of the entrance, if there are coming predators inside or not. So they're sometimes the only cave structure in the industrial forests. If you have older pine trees or off-dying pine trees, then the woodpeckers starting their caves there. They starting many initial caves and monitor them over years. So if they're getting, as you can see on the right picture, if the trees starting to heal, the woodpeckers come over and removing the healing areas, so the cave is staying open. A woodpecker is not stupid. He doesn't want to build into a healthy tree because it's very difficult. He waits till bacterial and fungi is going on. They working in rotten wood, and the woodpeckers comes after years and finishing the cave. Then it's a very good system. They have many of these initial caves and controlling them all over the years, many years, and we'll see if it's overgrown or not. Sometimes, very often, they choose the place under an overhang. So if you can see, there is where the branch was of the tree. Underneath this spot, the woodpecker starting their caves, for example. So it's a kind of a water protection as well. Here you can see Dendrococcus syriacus. This is a protected species in Austria. It's very similar to the Dendrococcus major, but only some things are different. I will show you this on another picture. But this, for example, is protected species, and another one not. So it's not so easy for arborists to say the difference, for sure. You can see how long a woodpecker cavity need to get appropriate for example, beds. For sure, you all know beds are not lying on the ground of the cave; they're hanging above, and it needs more to 50 or 60 years till a woodpecker cavity is appropriate for beds. So it doesn't help if we have trees with woodpecker cavities for beds, because they don't go inside, because they cannot hang over there. So it really needs longer time to have this cave system for a bigger cluster of beds, for example. In Austria at the moment, there is kind of a categorization of old trees. So if you are a tree controller and you go around and see a woodpecker cavity, then it's a kind of a risky tree. And it's written like this also in the documentation. And in the cities at the moment, they are working on it. If you have this kind of damaged areas, then this tree can be a danger for the citizens and they cut it down. So there is no possibility to have this woodpecker cavity for 60 years, and there is no possibility for the fungi and the bacterials to make it appropriate for the beds as well. You can see what the woodpeckers are doing for the industrial forest. They're getting out these, for sure, the bark beetles and stuff, and the other insects. So for sure, industrial forests as well should take care of woodpeckers, because they are the best biological pest control you can find. The tongue of the woodpecker is sitting on the back head and is going underneath the jaw through the bill, and that's how they can work with this with the tongue. And at the end of the tongue, there are some sticky parts and also kind of hooks, and so they can get out the larvae. We have these woodpecker species in Austria as well. As I told you before, the Dendrococcus major is very common and you can see it everywhere, but the Dendrococcus syriacus, it's the bird directive Annex 1. So it's very protected. For sure, for arborists, it's not easy to find the different between these birds in the phenotype. It's, for example, the black stripe going to the back head, and in the Dendrococcus major, but not in Syriacus. Diopicus medius is also Annex 1 and also very protected in Austria. Minor is building most of the cavities for tits, for example. The blue tit needs this woodpecker because it's doing a very small entrance, and the great tit, for example, is very dominant and sometimes even kill other singing bird species, for example. And so it's very important that the diameter is as small as possible. The picoides, I told you before, is just depending on old spruce trees, spruce forests, for example. then the Dendrocopus leucodus, it's very difficult to find still in Austria. There's just some places left where you can find them. It's also Annex 1 for sure, and it's more in the mountainous areas, and for example also in the wilderness areas in Dürnstein. We can ask Ingrid later. The Triocopus martius is a very important architect. It's building the big caveries. So inside these caves, bats, for example, sometimes having the mating season. For winter time, it's not so perfect because the entrance is too big sometimes, and it's not good for the thermoregulation. But these caves are big enough to house marten, for example, or owl species. It's very important architect, and also Annex 1. The Picus viridis and Picus canus, you could find them very often in cities and parks. But canus is also disappearing more and more. That's why it's Annex 1. These birds always making different entrances. The martius entrances you will recognize because it's a very big hole, and the Picus viridis, for example, is an oval hole, and the Dendrocopus major is exactly round. So it's all the Dendrocopus species producing round entrances. That's easier to control if you are on the floor, for example. After the woodpeckers did nest in a cave, because some woodpecker species have 10 cavities they're controlling all over the years, and also switching all over the years because of the parasites for sure, and they are not really cleaning the nests. So there are other bird species that does that, and they clean these cavities and use these cavities for themselves. For example, the Upupa, Epops, European hoopoe, maybe you know it from the, I'm sure you know it from the, from the picture. It's a very charismatic bird, and it's breeding in just 2 areas in Austria because they also need bigger insects, and they need open land with grazing, for example, and old fruit trees, which having nice tree structure, cave structures. Also the jackdaws, for example, they are typical cave breeders, but for sure the bigger caves where they can breed inside also in colonies, they are disappearing. So they are very often linked to nest boxes and need kind of denaturized structures, for example, chimneys or other industrial stuff where they can breed in. Other birds for sure as well, as I told you, the nuthatch, they are closing bigger gaps if they want to make the entrance appropriate for them. All the tits are depending on woodpecker cavities, and also the tree creepers, for example, and the Jinx torquilla. Jinx torquilla is counts to the woodpecker family, but he is not building itself nests, so he's also depending on nests from the Dendrocopus major, for example. A very good example is the sparrow. The sparrows were all over Austria very, very common, but at the moment they are really, really disappearing because they were breeding in buildings, and the buildings getting more and more restorated and closed. All the gaps are closed, and for these sparrows it's more and more difficult to find appropriate nest places. So nest box systems and systems where they can house again, it's very welcome, and we are doing it all over Vienna to relocate or help the sparrows to not getting disappeared. Many arborists ask me for seasons when they can cut. It's very difficult to say because proper tree cavities, they are used all over the year. At the beginning for sure from the birds because they're breeding inside there, and you can see on the example of the blue tit that they're starting in the April, and then it's going on till end of May, June that they're flying out, the fledglings, but sometimes they do a second breed, and so it's very difficult to say if there is a bird inside or not. After this time, the bats going inside already, or other bird species are breeding a little bit late, and so it's very difficult to tell when is the best time to cut down a tree if it's not possible to save the tree. My answer for this is always the best thing is to endoscope the trees. If you have an old tree in a city or in a park and you have to remove it, then it's the best way to take an endoscope and have a look into it. Because endoscopes at the moment, they are not very expensive and it's easy because you can connect them on your phone or a tablet. And that's how I also work. If I climb up to a tree and there is a big cavity and it's not possible to save this tree, then we endoscope it, make a picture or a video even, because with a video it's sometimes easier to tell which kind of birds are inside, or if there are bats inside, it's not easy to tell from a picture. And then we can send it to the authorities and can beg or ask if it's possible to leave this tree or to extract the cave with the animals inside and locate it next to the place where it was. The faunistic use of the tree structures, it's clear, and I told it before. We have the primary and secondary uses of tree cavities. The primary users for sure the woodpeckers and the wood decomposing fungi, and then you will find after this time for sure at first time the birds, other birds, singing birds, or owls. It depends on the size of the cave. And after this time and after this destruction is getting further, you will find bats inside. And if you have bat caves, it's very, very rare and seldom and very precious because, as I told you, it needs very long time till a woodpecker cavity is getting to a appropriate housing for bats. For sure, you will also find squirrels, dormouse, martens inside. You have the examples, glis, for example, going inside these cavities. Squirrels, even if they're building their nests as well, but they also use tree cavities. And the martes, it's very rare in Austria already because they're also depending on trees, on old trees. Yeah, the common dormouse I told you before, but also Hyla arborea. It's a big problem with amphibians in Austria because of chemicals and also insect loss, and also the mixed structure forests and bushes, and also these small water places, which are very important for Hyla, for example. We have for sure the bat species. This is a very, very big topic, and with this topic alone you could do a presentation. So as I told you, it's not easy to do it in this short term, but I will give you the important facts. We have 52 species in Europe and 28 species are recognized in Austria. They're all FFH 2 and 4, so they're all protected. It doesn't matter if you cannot say which bat you will find in the tree is protected. So sometimes, or more often than sometimes, it happens that tree climbers, arborists cutting down a tree and cut through a cluster. And if there are noctular bats inside, it could be over 500 individuals, and this is population relevant if you cut through this cluster. So it's very important that the tree climbers or arborists know what they are dealing with. That's why we're always speaking a lot about these topics. Examples are Myotis myotis or Nyctalus noctula. It's very Nyctalus noctula is very often and common in the urban areas, for example. But also Vespertilus murinus, and I will show you pictures later on that you know. I mean, if you don't know the Latin name of it. These bats who inhabit forests depend on old trees with big tree cavities, because the noctular birds, as I told you, can go into the clusters with 500 animals, individuals or more in the hibernation territories. So it's very important that you have enough of old trees. As you can see at this GPS tracking monitoring picture, you can see just one bat using several cavities over weeks, more or less, because they more or less go every day, or some days it depends on the weather and the temperatures for sure, and also the range of parasites inside the caves. So they need more up to 50 different accommodations all over the place that they can switch from cave to cave. So it's not enough if you have just one tree with a cavity system. You need more trees that you can switch if the accommodation is it's dirty or full with parasites, or there are predators inside. Sometimes can happen as well, for sure. So they have to have the possibility to leave. Also, if they are hunting in the nights, for sure, when the daybreak is coming, then they're choosing the closest cavity. And it's very interesting how the bats remember where the cave was. If you remove the trees, they're still flying around this area where the den was. That's why very often, if we can extract the cave, we put it at the same place where it was before, maybe just on the next tree, and the bats will find this this accommodation again immediately. So they know perfectly where this, and they remember perfectly where this tree. You see the bed here is it's very complex and very long, so it's not easy. As I told you before, it's not possible to tell you when it's without a problem to cut down the habitat tree. There is all over usage the year, so in the winter it's clear there is hibernation, but then they're starting with the fertilization of the eggs, and then starting with the maternity time. Then you have the babies, and the males are sitting into this Wochenstuben, and they give birth and raising their kids. And the October and September they're starting with mating season again, and in October they are need the reserves for the winter time for sure, and then they're starting to go into the winter waters. So it's very difficult, and what I said again, it's the only way to tell it if you look inside the cavery, if there is a cluster or not, or bats sleeping. And you can see where you can find the lower beds. It's more or less everywhere in the tree. If there is a damage, it can be behind barks, for sure not in the winter time, but during the year you can find them behind barks, in slices, or in cavities from the bottom, or in trunks. So it's interesting to inspect the whole tree before you take action. Hibernation is for sure depending on the species and the weather, but more or less from November to February. Then you have the nursery roosts where they have the babies from May. And the mating is from August to October, but it's also happening in trees or around them. So it's very difficult to say when it's safe. And what I have shown you before, it needs 40 years till the cavity is appropriate for bats. You can see biologists endoscoping the caves and have a look inside. On the right picture, you find noctula bats. They are cut out of the tree. Luckily, the arborist who cut the beds down did not cut through the beds. He cut underneath them. Very often they see a woodpecker hole, like you can see on the left side, and they think, okay, I know the woodpeckers are building the cavery down underneath the hole, so I cut over it, and then if there are birds inside, they are safe, because most of them don't have an endoscope, so they cannot have a look inside how deep the cave is or how high. And if you have an endoscope, it's more easy to measure it as well. Then you can hold it on the outside of the trunk and make yourself a mark where you can find the bottom or the top, and then you cut this piece out and rig it down, and then you can put it on another tree if it's necessary. Or I can take also this cavity, because it's a perfect nest box, and use it on another place if it's not used by bats. Normally, if bats are inside, you can find these pellets inside of the cavery, or you can smell it, because the feces of bats smell like nutty scents. So it's mostly possible to tell if there are bats inside or not. If the cave is big enough, it's very appropriate, or very often common, that there are bats inside, at least one. You will see it on the next pictures. If you find bats or discover bats, there are many important behaviors. Best is for sure to leave the area if it's possible, if the disturbance is not too high. Especially in the winter time, it's very dangerous because they for sure hibernate, and if you wake them up, they need so much energy that they cannot go asleep again, and most of them die then. So it's very important if the arborists disturb the beds while hibernation, you have to rescue them because they will not survive this disturbance if it's too cold. If it's a warm winter, it's possible to survive, but they for sure depend on the insects, and the insects for sure in winter time they are not active, and then they will starve to death. I heard it many times that they find beds, they cut them out of the tree because in winter time they very often cut down trees, and then they bring them to the next park and release them again. And for sure the beds will not survive this procedure. If you touch the animals, it's a lot of stress. So it's possible that that alone this stress costs them so much energy that they will not survive this stress. It depends on the for sure the condition of the bed. Especially in very warm and hot winter times, it's possible that they dehydrate, and then can be also lead to death. So it's important, if you find a dehydrated bed, they are very inactive in the summertime, so they're hanging sometimes on houses or where they think it's more cool. And it's possible that you give them some water, they lick it off some wooden part or whatever, and so they get hydration again. If possible, don't illuminate the beds, they're heated for sure, because they're night active. And as I told before, it's possible if they cut the tree, then that they kill the whole cluster with up to 700 individuals, especially for nocturnal beds. Don't open these bed boxes, please, during the day. As you see on these pictures, this is not a good example. The beds hate it for sure, and the stress is very enormous for them. So this is just a not to do example on this picture. This is a picture of the bed roost key. It's a very interesting thing in Great Britain. They monitor these bed roosts very good. You can see on this small diameter of branch, it's a dead wood. You can see also the entrance underneath the pink ribbon. You see the longer entrance on more or less close to the bottom, and where she has the finger or he has the finger, they're sitting the bed. They just couldn't find it out with an endoscope for sure. If you cut this thing down because you think, oh, it's just a branch and it's not big, it would be fatal for this bed, for example. It's just one inside, but one is always better than no one. The bed species are they are more or less common in the trees. They are Nyctala noctula, Nyctalus noctula, for example, the Myotis bechsteini, Nyctalus leiseri. This very rare bed, but sometimes you can find it for sure. And Myotis branti, for example, it's also very rare already. And Natari, I mean, I'm just talking now about Austria. I don't know how it is in the other countries. I think there is a big difference between the countries. But if we are speaking to tree climbers and arborists, mostly they find the noctula birds, for example. Insects is a big topic. Also cannot speak too much about it. That's why I didn't translate it, because there is not enough time for it. But we have several insect species. They are very rare and well protected. So if you're a tree climber and you destroy the habitat of these insects, it's also could be also a big problem with the law. We have the law system that there is also a penalty if you destroy protected species or their nests, and you can go to prison or pay a lot of money if you do that without knowledge, because knowledge, missing knowledge is not saving you. And if there are people that know about these facts, then could be difficult for the tree climbers to win this fight. The Cerambyx cerdo is a very big horn beetle, and yeah, it's very rare in Austria. It's depending on oaks, so you can just find them in old oak trees, or trees there, or almond trees or beech nut trees. They must be very old, and you can find it the typical signs on the outside of the tree from the larvae. The Osmoderma beetle, it's a very typical beetle for this kind of a protection topic, because it's very, very rare already in Austria, and the larvae need 3 to 4 years for their development, and they are very often stick to one tree, and they stay inside of this black humus inside of the cavities. So they are feeding on this fungi or malm inside of these cavities. So it's if you find one cavity with this beetle inside, it's strictly protected. And for sure, the stag beetle, most of you know it. Yeah, this beetle is depending also on old rotten trees, as well I've shown you before on this graphic. And yeah, even these beetles, they were more or less common in Austria, but they're also getting rarer and rarer because the old rotting trees are missing. Hornets, for example, long time ago, I mean, when I was a child, there haven't been much hornets in Austria left. But now they're coming back a little bit because they found possibilities to nest as well in buildings and stuff. So we will find them more and more in our country again. But there is a guy, it's a very interesting guy, who is building nest boxes for hornets. It's a very nice system. He's putting them all over the place, and as you can see on the right picture, the hornets love it and they really, really use it. And it's very simply built. So if you're interested in it, just contact me, or I can give you a link for this construction guideline, how you build a hornet nest box. That leads me to the alternatives. I can just tell you, alternative to a natural tree cavity, it's not very often appropriate. Wooden nest boxes, like you can see in this picture, it's a little bit extreme picture, but I know, but it's very good. It's very good to see. They are not having the same microclimate like a tree cavity for sure. And for example, with bats, they need a really thick wood on the outside of the cavity to hibernate inside. So a wooden box like this would be too thin that they can hold their temperatures during wintertime. For birds as well, because of parasites and because of temperature control, it's also important that the wood is tight and that there is no chemical inside for sure. And the microclimate is as well not even the same like in a natural cavities. There are several types of nest boxes for sure. We have many different nest boxes in our projects. For example, the Ural project, you can see the plastic box. It's the only positive thing on this plastic box is that it's very long living. And we have over 500 nest boxes in our network. So it would be very difficult if the wooden nest box getting rotten after a while to change these boxes, because we do not have the money or the people for it. So that's the reason why I have these plastic boxes. More or less it's working well because the Ural is breeding very early in the year, so it's not that hot in these nest boxes. But for sure the microclimate or the bacteria inside, it's not the same like in a wooden den. If the Urals have the possibility of a natural cavity, they use it. We have it seen in the wilderness area, also in the Wienerwald area, that if there is an old tree with a cave, with an appropriate cave, they use always the cave, not the nest box. I mean the nest box it's just an alternative, but never a perfect solution. As well, you can see on this middle nest box, we very often use metal rings in front of the entrances, because for sure woodpeckers very easily can open this entrance, but also sometimes from the side, not only where the entrance is. So you would need a completely wrapped metal nest box that the woodpeckers cannot open it. With a natural cavity, for example, the Dendrocoppus mile couldn't go so easily inside because the rest wood is more thick, for example. On the right picture, you can see Claudidium passerinum, a pygmy owl, nesting in an old trunk. this one was extracted from a cut-down tree and is used now as a nest box. And in my point of view, this is the best way to produce a nest box because it's more or less like a natural cavity, and you can save it from above with metal sheet or whatever, and then it's protected. So this is, in my point of view, the best way to produce alternative. You can see this bed housing box. This is good maybe in the summertime as a place to rest, but it's not good for hibernation for sure because you cannot keep the temperature inside. There are several ways to build nest boxes. I mean, companies like Schwegler build a lot of this concrete, wood mesh stuff. I don't know. As I told you, it depends on the taste. I mean, we have seen that birds breeding there and there inside, but there is no really good study where you can see the difference between a nest box and a natural cavity from the success of the outflying individuals. That's, for example, a box I built for noctula bats. The people did cut down on this big platanus, a dead trunk, and inside this trunk were over 100 noctula bats. They killed also a lot of bats with this action, but many bats survived. And in the following evening, they were all circling around this place where the den was. And then the government called me and asked me if I can fit a winter box for these noctula birds. And that's how I did it. I took a dead trunk from Arboricule tree and flamed it. So the resin is burnt down, and there is not much resin inside because it was a dead one already, and so it's not that heavy also. I cut in an entrance hole, you can see in the middle picture on the bottom, and I fixed also a separation sheet between the two places because the noctula bats sometimes fighting in the winter time or in the nights, so it's good if you have a separation between them. And this one is very massive and big, and you see the rest of the wood on the sides is thick, so it's good for temperature regulation. On the back side of the box, on the left picture, you can see the holes where the feces can come out, and the entrance is on the front side. You can open this box to clean if it's necessary. Yeah, but not in the wintertime, please. What do I do if I find injured animals or if it comes to an accident? This is a very difficult question because you have to find out whether this birds or bats are injured or not. And this is very difficult if you're not an expert. So it's better to call experts or to bring it to a station where there's a rescue center or vet, and they can have an X-ray, and then you can see what's going on inside the bird. Very often we have broken wings or broken legs. Sometimes it's healable and fixable, and we can release these birds again. But for sure, if it's not possible to heal them, we euthanize them, and so it's the only fairest way to deal with. You can see a Falcotinulculus, young ones, fallen out the nest after tree work, and they are more or less short before leaving the nest already, but still too young to leave the area. And at this age, it's not easy to sit them again in a nest or something in the area because they're already starting to hop away. They will beg for food for sure, but if they're sitting around on the floor, they're perfect prey for predators. Also, the woodpeckers cut out from a tree, also close to fledge and leave the nest, but also still too young that they could be autonomous already. You can see I were called to a place in a garden. They were cutting down a nest from a Asiotus, a long-eared owl. Strangely, the mother was sitting on the nest, and the tree was cut down, and the mother didn't leave the nest fast enough, and the wing did break. We could fix this wing with a pin because it was the upper arm, and you can pin this arm again, But if it's the hand or the arm, lower arm broken, then there's no chance for this bird to survive. So at this story, this one was lucky, but sometimes you come too late for sure. And for this, it's very good because they're breeding in crow nests, so it's possible to see them. It's not they are not hidden in the tree cavity. If you are a finder and you find them, fledglings are they left their nests and sitting around like this long-eared owl. You can see on the right side they are not injured or in danger mostly. So you can leave them just. They get fed by their parents still. And it's sadly it happens very often that the people bring to us in the rescue station these young birds because they're sitting around on the floor or in bushes, and the people think, this poor bird fell out of nest and they have to rescue it. And for sure, this so-called estling in our language, sitting around and begging for food, and it's very normal. If they're in danger and sitting on the road or on the street somewhere, you can put them again in the bush and the parents will find them again because they're begging in the night or they're singing birds during the day. So that's the best help you can do. If you take them at home, there's a big problem coming on, and it's imprinting, because many people think, oh, it's a nice owl, I want to feed it, and they're starting to feeding it with meat or something, and then they're getting imprinted, and this imprinting is not reversible, so you cannot take it back, your action. This bird think it's an human and acts like this as well. So it's, for these birds, it's not very funny, because if they're getting in the mating season and trying to mate, then it's very dangerous, because some of the predator birds, or mostly of the predator birds and owls, they are territorial animals, so they're attacking humans after this time, because they think they are not, these humans are not partners, and so they are making troubles. And these birds are always landing in our stations, and these are healthy birds. They have just a problem with their mindset, and it's not possible to release these birds again. If you want to see more about this work, you can see it also on this Eulen- und Greifvogelstation.at link. I can show you on this presentation down here. This station is very big. In this station are over 700 animals now, from rescued actions or from the breeding network for the bearded vultures, for example, or the Ural owls. And if you want to see more about this, just visit the web page. There is a big fear of deadwood in Austria. It's coming along more and more. On the left side down there, there is a picture from Czech Republic. Our neighbor countries are very often having a healthy, how can I say, a healthy status of relationship between humans and deadwood, because they think it's, it was always there and it's not a problem, and if deadwood is coming down, it's not that heavy like greenwood. But as I said at the beginning, humans always need a way to see if there is action wanted, and in Austria it's deadwood. So if there is deadwood, it has to be cut out, and this is a big problem for many species. Sometimes there is alternative action. You can see on the right side, if they cut down trees, they hang them together like these pyramids, so at least there is some deadwood safe. But as I mentioned before, it's the complexity of a dead tree, and as you can see in the middle, it's one of my trees. It's standing on my ground, and it's standing there like this since, I don't know, 20 years. It's not coming down if there is a wind or a thunderstorm or whatever. And because deadwood is light, and deadwood has no canopy, so if there is a strong wind, it has not the same tension like, for example, a greenwood. You can see in the upper picture there was an oak branch coming down after a storm. For sure, it's a green branch because it's more heavy and it has more affection from the wind in comparison with the deadwood, because deadwood is light and wind cannot catch it so easily. On the left side and on the bottom picture, you can see trees in this Leinzer Tiergarten in Vienna. If you're one time in Vienna, you definitely should visit this place, because it's a very wild place. Wild hogs all over the place, and also several woodpecker species and also predator species. It's very interesting. Okay, I'm through, very fast through. I hope you enjoyed the presentation a bit, at least. And if you have questions, for sure, just give me them. And if you want to donate for our projects, you can just contact me on OrnithoClimbing, it's my company, or Wald Institute for sure. And there is a support possibility. We are doing several projects for nest box projects or protection projects for dead wood, for example. And in the future, it should get more and more. So I say thank you that you're listening, and I hope we will see us one day